Chapter 16, You Got to Kill, November-December 1998. The day a local DJ phoned Detective Tony Reyes with a strange tip, he was not surprised. Working a source came as easily to Reyes as laughing. He didn't know he possessed that talent when he became a cop. He joined the force because he craved fraternity and action and adrenaline. And along the way, he discovered that people were books waiting to be read. Informants took risks to help him make cases. Hardened criminals spilled life stories and confessed sins. Maybe they sensed he wouldn't judge them for their worst crimes. He'd throw their asses in jail, yes, but unlike some cops, he did not tell them they were scumbags, dirtbags, or venom their mothers should have aborted. They alone had to live with their darkest memories. That's between them and God, he'd say. There's a guy coming in from out of town, the DJ told him. Looks like a hardcore gangbanger selling discs out of his trunk. Okay, Reyes said, wondering why this mattered. What kind of disc? Gangster rap CDs, the guy said. The Nuestra Familia was cutting tracks, telling Norteños to go shoot screezos. Reyes tried to wrap his head around this one. That prison gang from Salinas was getting into the music business. Although Salinas just lay south of Watsonville and east of Castroville, its infamous gangsters never had much interest in the surrounding farm communities known more for artichokes, berry crops, and 1980s cannery strikes than anything criminal. If there was one thing Reyes understood, it was his hometown small-time gangs. Law-abiding residents and criminals alike had known him since he was a kid, and not much went down that he didn't hear about. He believed that from trust came information, and he worked to earn trust in small ways every day. Back when Reyes was a rookie working the jail, he followed through with the promise to order a magazine or put $10 on a guy's books. The gestures paid off. Gangsters shook his hand and said they knew it wasn't personal after his testimony put them away for years. Once he chased a man and zapped him with a taser. Later, the guy walked up and embraced him and assured Reyes he and his family were doing fine. As a result of this trust, he felt the pulse of his town's underworld and could predict the rhythm of his crimes until now. Intrigued, he asked the DJ to bring him a copy of the rap disc. The guy said sure. The idea of kids listening to that shit made Reyes' skin crawl. His greatest fear in life, the thing he dreaded more than any danger faced in his workday, was that his own children might get sucked into drugs or gangs. That it could begin so insidiously through music was a sickening thought. Music had always been his passion, especially the smooth old school sounds. The East Side Story Collection or Duke of Earl by Gene Chandler. Growing up, the Reyes kids would all call down to Whittier Records in LA and order 45s and LPs in an era when other American kids listened to disco and 8-tracks and cassettes. While they waited for the albums, they tuned in to the Sunday night oldies and dedications on CH16 and Salinas. It was funny to think how music had ultimately saved him, how his love for it presented a hairpin turn on the path he'd follow to become the only bilingual cop in the department. As a kid, he never liked cops and certainly never thought of being one. A Marine maybe, but never a cop. Policemen would venture into his neighborhood and the kids would throw stuff at them. The kids weren't crooks, it was just that everyone's parents said, "You never talk to cops." Coming from Mexico, it was a trust issue because in Mexico, no one trusted the government. And though his parents were born in Mexico, his dad was raised in Texas. So Tony grew up with the Texan pride of being Mexican American. More so the American side than the Mexican, Tony liked to say. His dad tried his best to make the boys speak only English, but his mom clung to her Spanish, and thus the mother tongue survived in the Reyes household. Nowadays, his command of 2 languages served him well, and so did his command of 2 opposing worlds, the cops and the thugs. The DJ returned with the CD. Reyes studied it, starting with the outside. The cover photo showed close to 50 shaved down guys posing in a park, most wearing red shirts and ball caps, many flashing the 4 or the 14 with their fingers. It said GUN in red Old English letters, and below that, Generations of United Norteños. The label was North Star Records. He opened the case and played it. It was god-awful rap, but the message bothered him more than the sound. The spoken word introduction intoned a call to all Norteños to stop the set tripping between neighborhood factions, to drop all the differences and unite. The tracks had titles like Scrizo Killer, 114% Buster, and You Gots to Kill. His gut sense told him he'd stumbled into something ugly and dangerous. He was curious as hell about the business entity behind this CD. Where did it come from? Were the gangsters' lyrics for real, or were these rappers just wannabes? He made a few calls. Most of the officers he spoke with were as puzzled as he was, but a Modesto cop said yeah, he was familiar with it. The CDs were produced in the Central Valley by some white guy who thought he was Raza, a Nuestra Familia Carnal named Robert Grattan. Reyes repeated the cop's description of Grattan's appearance to the DJ, and it sounded just like the guy who pulled into Watsonville to sell the disc. Fellow officers told Reyes they were alarmed by the album's call for bloodshed. They worried there'd be some kind of northern uprising. Cops were thinking about a case in San Jose where a Norteño committed a homicide while getting pumped up listening to the CD. And now, the Sam Goody record chain was selling the damn thing. The album's message of gang unity didn't really hit home until the day Reyes and his fellow officers pulled over a carload of once rival Norteño gang members from different neighborhood sets who were hanging out like best friends. Reyes thought, whoa, what's going on here? Those two groups had been at each other since he was a kid. While it was nice to see them get along, he had the uncomfortable feeling a united Norteño army was growing right in front of him. When parole agents searched the home of one of the car's passengers, they found a small scrap of paper. It was a kite from Pelican Bay. Reyes knew that gangs had several ways to pass these mini writing messages from prisoner to prisoner and onto the streets. One way was to hold the paper against the glass when a visitor came. Another way was to wrap a note into cellophane and insert it into a certain body cavity before paroling. Even during total lockdowns, communication continued in the form of fishing. An inmate might find a scrap of paper fluttering from the next tier, as if from heaven, attached to a thread carefully extracted from the waistband of boxer shorts, hence the name kite. The Chicano inmates referred to the kites as huilas, probably a corruption of the Spanish word huela, it flies. The Huila Reyes' team discovered opened with this line: the following is an update policy, law implementation that is being handed down by La Nuestra Familia, NF, and will be enforced by all carnales and those who stand dedicated to la lucha of the Norte. The tiny note said that previous messages to stop city versus city and barrio versus barrio infighting between Norteños had been ignored, and it made clear that the rules were now going to be enforced under penalty of death. The tone was almost biblical, Old Testament in its authority. So now on, from this day forward, examples will be made and bloodshed from those who wish to ignore said law, and their names will be noted and filtered out as no good and be moved on every time the opportunity arises. After the threat came the gang's new orders. It is time to wake up, soldados, and put all barrios against barrios, set tripping, etc. to an end, and direct our undivided attention on our real enemies, the Sureños, Scrizos. It is now time to shut them down and run them out of our cities and towns. Also to all, it is our responsibility to hand down and enforce this law upon our young soldados who are under the age of 18 years old. This is who we are. There is no age limit, and is why we must hand down this to all, period. Also, in ending, it is important that all know and never lose sight of the fact that La Nuestra Familia is the one who created El Norte and will always dictate the laws, policies of El Norte. The kite was signed Siempre hasta la tumba, forever to the grave. It was inconceivable to Reyes that the scrappy neighborhood crews he chased around town could have a connection to this level of organized crime, but he held the evidence in his hands. The NF was apparently trying to assert its authority over every Norteño clique in the state, down to the tiniest farm town, street corner set. What wasn't clear was yet how successful they'd be. When he thought of the once enemy Norteño cliques riding side by side in the same car, he was greatly troubled. In the following weeks, he learned from other officers that copies of the same huila were turning up in searches around the state. People were calling it the kite to unite. This thing's out of control, Reyes thought.